Okay, you are all standing, all of you, before Hashem, your God. And after this, he details your heads, shiftechem, your tribes, goimer, Chavitzacha, from your wood choppers, until your water carriers. It's known the analysis, the examination of this of Arabei Marnasiim, since it says all of you, that all of you are standing. Why is it important to enumerate all the details? Your heads, your tribes, your wood choppers, your water carriers. Especially this question becomes more difficult. The idea of all of you is in the way that you're standing. How? Where are you standing? Before Hashem, your God. Visham, when you're talking about Hashem in Hashem's presence, the pasuk says that there is a situation, a place, where the one that has much money, a rich person, is not given any more recognition than someone that is poor. So when we're standing in front of the Eibishter, so for sure it's all together. There's no differences. There's no distinctions. Hashavah mashvakot God, like we have in the davening on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that He's the one that that is equal, that is both equal at and equalizes both the minor and the great one. So since it's Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kולכם Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, it's before Hashem your God. How is it possible to say? Along with the fact that we are standing strong before Havai Elokeichem, there's also the different and divided, the specific levels of Rashechem, Shiftechem, your heads, of your tribes, and your tribes, till the level of your wood choppers and your water carriers. Ois base, line 14. And this will be understood. According to what the Alter Rebbe explains at the beginning of our parsha. And he says as follows, quote, this parsha of Nitzavim, we always read before Rosh Hashanah. It's hinted in the word hayom, atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. The word hayom, like we've had also in the previous two mamorim from the Dvar Malchus, the koi al Rosh Hashanah. The word hayom, this day, is going on Rosh Hashanah. How come? Why does the word hayom go on Rosh Hashanah? Because like we find the same lashon in the Rosh Hashanah davening, this is the day, the beginning of your actions. Like it's known where it says in the Zohar that Hayom is also going on Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, if we're talking about Atem Nitzavim Hayom, Hayom is the day of Rosh Hashanah. Because Hayom is going on Rosh Hashanah, Tiknu Likris Parsha Zu Lifnei Rosh Hashanah. So the Chazal established and arranged that the Parshas always come out, that Parshas Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah. According to this, we explain what it says in the words of Medrash Rabbah, She'atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, that this part where it says Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, that Hashem is making a covenant with all of you, etc., should have really been the beginning of Chumash Dvarim, because that's the whole idea of Chumash Dvarim, the covenant, the bris, the parting words that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying with the Yidden and making them into a covenant with Hashem. So why doesn't it say at the beginning of Chumash Dvarim, Al she'ein mukdam u'mocher b'Torah? But since there's no order in the Torah that says that things happen chronologically. So even though Atam Nitzavim Hayom chronologically might belong at the beginning of Chumash Dvarim, so it could still be at the end or towards the end of Chumash Dvarim. Still in all, but there has to be a reason why it's located here. She said she'afal became still in all mashenemar Atam Nitzavim, top of page Vav. Karev l'soif Sefer Mishnah Torah. Why does it say Atam Nitzavim close to the end of the Sefer of Mishnah Torah Chumash Dvarim, which is called a repetition of the Torah? Harezem l'fish hayom koyal Rosh Hashanah. Because the word Hayom and Atam Nitzavim Hayom is referring to Rosh Hashanah, v'lachein ha-seder nichtav v'be'inyan shtei nikras fnei Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, this seder was written in the Torah in such a way that it will be read before Rosh Hashanah. In other words, when we say in general this rule that ein mukdam mocher b'Torah, that the Torah doesn't speak in chronological order of things the way they occurred, that doesn't mean that there's no purpose in why the Torah places certain things in certain places. A lot of times it'll place certain stories next to other stories because of something that they share in common or something that he's trying to contrast, etc., as we find different times in Rashi. So the same thing over here, when the Medrash says that despite the fact that Atam Nitzavim Hayom should have been at the beginning of Chumash Dvarim, it says at the end because the Torah is not written in a chronological order, but there needs to be an explanation. So why is it put over there? Why is this taken out of the chronological order? What's the idea behind it? So the reason behind it is because the Atam Nitzavim was written at the end, because since it's referring to Rosh Hashanah, so it has to be at the end of Chumash Dvarim that's read close to Rosh Hashanah. Line 4 on page Vav. Mamshech Levar Alter Rebbe continues to explain. And now he's quoting again the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe in Kudei Torah. Shekol nitzutzu neshames nitzavim misalim b'mekodim harishim b'yom zeh ad lifnei havaya. All the sparks of neshamas are standing fast, which shows on a very strong level of standing, and they arise and they ascend in their first source on this day of Rosh Hashanah until before Havaya. That's what it means. Atam Nitzavim Hayom Kולכם Lifnei Havaya. And all of the sparks are enumerated. Rasheichem, Shiftechem, your heads, your tribes, Mechayte Vaitzach Ad Mimecha, from your wood choppers into your water carriers. So the Rebbe explains what is the Alter Rebbe saying. V'hainu, this means Shebarosh Hashanah Misalim. Actually, he's quoting further from the Alter Rebbe. Shebarosh Hashanah Misalim Kol HaMadreges. In Rosh Hashanah, all levels ascend and go up to a higher level. Afilu Mechayte Vaitzach Ad Mimecha. Even from your wood choppers, and even up till your water carriers. Sheim Bechinas Madreges Tachtoinis. They are the lowest levels, and etc. Because they all ascend above in their source where you were hewn out from. To be as one, entirely joined. In other words, that the point of emphasis is that despite the fact that there are these various different levels, even the lowest most level also has Atam Nitzavim Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. They rise up all the way to be before Hashem Elokeichem. So the Rebbe continues on line 12. This is emphasized the great wondrous matter of Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah, there's the idea that you are all standing today. This is a much higher state and situation even than it was in Matan Torah. So now the Rebbe is going to bring an interesting contrast between Rosh Hashanah and Matan Torah, but first he's going to show that they have a certain association. So he says in line 15, Bahagdim, by prefacing, Rosh Hashanah, Kosher, Matan Torah, Rosh Hashanah is connected with the giving of the Torah. Shayah Psukis, Shayfris, Maskirim, Ha'in in the Matan Torah, and the Psukim of Shayfris, we mentioned the idea of the giving of the Torah. Vayhi B'Yom HaShlishi. It was in the third day, and they heard the sound, the sounds of the shofars, etc., etc. So there was, and that's a pasuk that we about the sounds of the shofars that took place on Har Sinai. We mentioned this in the Psuki Shofars that we're mentioning on Rosh Hashanah, that we're supposed to mention from Torah and Vim Ksuvim, the Psuki Shofars. And then there's an even stronger connection, not just that the Psukim of Matan Torah that dealing with Shofars are mentioned in and amongst the Psukim about Shofars that we speak on Rosh Hashanah. There's another connection, that especially according to the well-known metaphor and mashal concerning the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. That why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? So it's the story that the famous story that the king was lost in the forest, and a simple shepherd was over there that was blowing that he found the place. I'm sorry, the person was someone that the king was trying to find a place back home, and the people didn't recognize him until there was a certain person that recognized him over there and showed him his way home, and he became, the king elevated him, and then he dressed himself in all the clothes and so on that he was I'm sorry, and then he did something wrong as a king, and the king sentenced him to death, and or the judges sentenced him to death, and then he asked to appear before the king in his garments that he found the king when he was in the wilderness, and then in the forest, and then the king remembered how this person was the only one to recognize him in the forest. The same thing, when we blow the shofar, we also are reminding Hashem of how Hashem was all alone and no one to recognize him. So he says, again, line 19, we remind the king Hashem, the state and situation that was when Hashem went with the Torah upon every single nation and language. No nations wanted to accept the Torah. Until Hashem came with the Torah to the Yidden and they accepted it. And that's the purpose of blowing shofar, to remind Hashem on the Rosh Hashanah of the shofar that was by Matan Torah. So there's an association between Rosh Hashanah and Matan Torah. Despite that association, the Rebbe is going to explain, and yet Rosh Hashanah is completely different. Avalaf became still in all the Yachdim as according to Matan Torah, along with the remembrance that we blow shofar Rosh Hashanah to remind Hashem of Matan Torah, where there was the sound of the shofar. Netoisa b'Rosh Hashanah, Maila shloi be'erech. On Rosh Hashanah, there's added an advantage that's totally incomparable. The idea behind this is top of page Zion. In what way is Rosh Hashanah so much higher than Matan Torah? Matan Torah, by the giving of the Torah, despite the fact that Hashem descended on Har Sinai, Musi is Baruch, he is very essence and being, his entire court came down and says, as a result of Hashem descending, that resulted in a situation down here below that even a bird did not fly during Matan Torah, and an ox did not low during the giving of the Torah. The Medrash says that when, and we derive it from the Psukim, and Rashi mentions this also, that Moshe went up on Har Sinai, Aaron also went up, but not to the level that Moshe went up. There was afterwards, there was the Kohanim, and then there was the Yidden. Everybody was distinct in how high they could go up on Har Sinai. So here we see that on Matan Torah there was distinctions amongst the Yidden. Masha'enkim b'Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to Rosh Hashanah, that is b'oif and Nali Yosef Shloi Ba'erach. This is a level that's even higher, incomparably so. Shemoshe v'Aaron neklolim Chaytav Etzecha v'Shoyim Mimecha b'oif and Shenitzavim Gomer Kولכם. That Moshe and Aaron are included with the wood choppers and the water carriers in a way that you are all standing together. There was no distinctions at this time, the time of Rosh Hashanah, Atem Nitzavim Hayom. There's no Moshe Rabbeinu Mechitza B'fnei Atzmai and Aaron Mechitza B'fnei Atzmai and so on. So he says in line 11, and as I'm moving this understood, Sha'inyan Da'atem Nitzavim, this idea that you are standing, Sheyesh B'shtei Nekudas. It has in it 2 points it's communicating. Ha'inyan the Kولכם. First of all, the idea that it's all of you. U'biyachad im zeh, gam chiluki adargis derasheichem shiftechem ad choyte v'tzecha v'shoyim memecham. That also that the different levels of your heads and your tribes until your wood choppers and your water carriers. Hareza mitzada inyan da hayoim da koyal Rosh Hashanah kilkaman. It's a result of this day. The fact that it's a day of Rosh Hashanah, that is what causes that, despite the fact that there are distinctions of Yidden, we recognize that there's distinctions of Yidden, but there's no separation and division between them, as we will explain further on. Ois Gimel, line 16. This will be understood by first prefacing the examination of the words that Alter Rebbe, this parsha is always read before Rosh Hashanah. It's hinted in the word Hayoim, like we said before, the Koyal Rosh Hashanah, that's referring to Rosh Hashanah. The Lachura seemingly Lefi Abir Hayoim Koyal Rosh Hashanah, according to explanation that Hayoim is referring to Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe asks a very simple question. The whole reason why we're reading Atem Nitzavim is because it's going on Hayom. Hayom is the day of Rosh Hashanah. So why do we read it always the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah? Hayom is going on Rosh Hashanah. We should make it so that we read Parshat Nitzavim on the day of Rosh Hashanah itself, the very day where it's talking about that the day is such a powerful day, etc., Nitzavim, Kولכם, and so on. So the Rebbe says, everything needs a preparation. Line 23. The idea behind this is, there's a rule in the Torah, as it's explained in the teaching of Chassidus, every matter there has to be prior to it a preparation from below. That preparation has to be similar to and something akin to that particular thing that you are preparing for. That's a general idea of an inspiration down here below, that when we do an inspiration down here below, it has to be similar to a similar thing from above. Just a simple example. If a person wants to elicit Hashem's chesed, so you need to have the level of tzedakah. You show chesed to people, you show kindness to people, so you elicit by Hashem the level of chesed. Similarly, by what we're going to talk about over here, even in a case where it's such a high level that our inspiration cannot really reach over there, it's not that we are drawing it down. It has to be a matter that's at least preparing the place, laying the groundwork. Similar to what it says, that you have to make for Hashem in a level that's beyond the Yisrus Lasata, you have to prepare for Him and make a complete place. That Hashem resides only in a complete and a whole place. It's not inspiration that forces the revelation from above. Not after it arose in His will, that by the inspiration down here below there becomes inspiration above, Even this, that you're preparing the place, that it should be an appropriate and ready vessel that should be able to come down and to be received the revelation from above. So even then, it has to be similar to what's coming down, even when you're just not drawing it down actually, but you're just making something that is similar to it. Just making a place that is ready for it. So even then, you need to make that the place that you're making ready for it has to be similar and corresponding to whatever you're hoping will come and reside over there.